All right, so tonight I have the pleasure of being joined by Ken Powtak. He's a freelance sports writer for the Associated Press. Ken is now a returning guest of the podcast. This is his second time on the podcast. Had him on in October, now have him back on here in May. A pleasure having you on the podcast, Ken. Thank you so much for your time. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Joey. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great having you back. You've been obviously a sports writer now for 40 years, obviously an illustrious career in the sports field, and you just had your first year you were included in the Hall of Fame vote for baseball this past year, this past ballot. You were one of the 425 writers for the Baseball Writers Association of America. How much of an honor was it to be included in that class of people that get to vote for the Hall of Fame?
Ooh, it was a big honor. It's not often that freelancers get to vote, and it took some work from my sports editor Jimmy Golan, who had to approach the BBWAA a couple of times, and then they found out some freelancers around the country were doing it, so they let me in as well. But generally, it's if you cover baseball 10 consecutive years, you're a voter. But I had covered baseball 33 consecutive years, and then I was allowed in 2016, and then my 10 consecutive years brought it up to 43. But here I am, maybe one of the older first time voters ever. I don't know.
That's a big time honor, just getting there, obviously. And even if it takes 40 plus years to do so, just having that honor is really something that not many writers can say. It's an honor of a lifetime being able to do that. So, and you do deserve it. All the work you've done over the years, you do deserve that honor. So, congratulations on that. On your ballot, you had one guy you voted for, and that was Carlos Beltran. What was your reasoning on Beltran getting in? Obviously, he was one of the two guys that were selected. It was Beltran and Andrew Jones. You had Beltran on your ballot. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I looked at his numbers, and he was comparable to Hall of Famers. I mean, his numbers were worthy. I mean, he was, I don't want to use the word borderline, but he was just below what I would call, just above, I should say, what I would call borderline, because he had a great career, had the hits, had the home runs, but I don't know if he was ever a dominant player, but he had longevity, and to me, that made him a Hall of Famer. Why did I only vote for four? I get asked that a lot. I had a hard time. Andrew Jones would have been next for me, I thought originally, and I thought Felix Hernandez too, to be honest with you. Then I dug in deeper. Andrew Jones might have had, from this is on memory now, from October or November, he might have had the lowest batting average of a Hall of Famer. And to me, I didn't consider him a Hall of Famer with the lowest batting average of one. Felix Hernandez didn't have a long enough career. I mean, I thought he was dominant. Then I dug into his numbers, and they just weren't Hall of Fame worthy. He had some great years, but just didn't string enough together. Matter of fact, when he tried to make a comeback with the Orioles, he even said it's to try to add to his Hall of Fame ballot. So, what does that tell you? The one that I am going to go back on and look again, and I was really torn on him at the very, very end. I went right to the wire on him. I was yes, I was no, I was yes, I was no. Chase Utley. Chase Utley had a really good career, and he doesn't jump out till you dig into those numbers. And then when Jeff Kent got in, that made me think even more once the Veterans Committee put him in. So Chase Utley, I'll be revisiting, to be honest with you, next year.
That's a great point, though. Chase Utley did have a very good career and was always a top player at his position, right? Second base. He was always one of the best in the game year in and year out. Another second baseman that you had off your ballot, but a guy I know that me and you talked about a lot on the podcast back. I think in October we mentioned him as one of like a Red Sox player that was underrated, a guy that we miss seeing in a Red Sox uniform. That's Dustin Pedroia. Obviously, you had him off your bracket. I'm sure it was a tough decision. Off your ballot, not your bracket, but you had him outside of it. What was the reason behind that? I'm sure it was a tough decision to make.
Again, he was an MVP. He was a Rookie of the Year. He had a nice resume, just not long enough. And let me sum it up this way. It's easy to give votes up to 10, you can vote. It's easy to throw votes to 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. I never pictured when I got the vote that I would ever do that. To me, a Hall of Famer is a Hall of Famer. You just don't throw a vote to someone and go, well, he's not going to get in anyway, so let's give him a vote. I know some of the old school writers think like that. Even some of the newer writers do, honestly. But then there's other writers, and it's their own prerogative. They'll vote for 7, 8, 9 guys, and that's fine too. Everybody, that's why it's a ballot.
And you're right. There is a contrast between what people do. I saw online on the BBWA, there was kind of a whole breakdown of everyone's public ballots, the people that wanted it to be public. And there was a wide range. A lot of people have like 7 or 8 votes. Some people had one. And that's the beauty of it, right? Everyone's going to have a different take on it. I know there were a few guys that we talked about as well off air that weren't included on many brackets, but they were on some ballots, but they were on some. And that was Barry Bonds obviously isn't on the ballot anymore. One guy that still is, though, it's getting some votes is Alex Rodriguez. Obviously not enough to get into the Hall of Fame, but he was on some ballots. Do you think he ever gets in, Alex Rodriguez?
I do not. I think this was, I'm doing this on memory again. I think this was year 7 possibly, and he's still stuck around 45%. I don't see him ever getting the 75%. Um, Barry Bonds is off the ballot now, and I don't ever see him getting in because the Veterans Committee didn't even come close to giving him 3/4 of what they needed, him and Clemens for that matter. And they were dominant players. I mean, when you think of baseball, that's the hard thing. When you think of baseball back then, you think of Bonds and Clemens and how dominant Rogers seven Cy Youngs. I mean, think about that. And I always maintain that Rogers' 86 season might be one of the more dominant I've ever seen when he won MVP and Cy Young. And I know this would get people upset, but if I had one game as a Red Sox manager and I had to go with Clemens or Pedro, and this is very debatable, I would only take Clemens because I feel like he could give you 8 or 9. I don't know if Pedro can give you 8 or 9. That's not nine. He was unbelievable. And he's a Hall of Famer for the right reasons. Pedro was dominant and he's a worthy Hall of Famer. But something about Roger in that big moment, he could mow down 16, 18, 20 as he did twice.
Yeah, and the career obviously too, having 7 Cy Youngs, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
really impressive on its own. And you also look at the game of baseball has changed a lot. There's not many guys that go 8 or 9 innings anymore. It's five or
Nope.
six innings. For him to be able to go that long in many games over the course of his career is very impressive. You don't see that nowadays. Guys are going 5 innings, right? So the game definitely has changed. With the vote that you had, obviously Beltran getting in, I completely agree. When you look at his stats compared to some other guys who've gotten in, definitely a Hall of Famer. There was obviously a point when he was a manager. I know that doesn't really necessarily factor in. Not a manager, he's as a coach for the Astros, a sign stealing scandal. Do you think that played a role in anybody keeping him off their ballot?
I think the first year it did, because if you remember, he did not get in the year before. He was bubbled, and then he got in fairly easily this time. And it probably was like a 1 year penalty to a lot of writers. Now, I wasn't a voter then. I don't know what I would have done, and that's not copping out. I probably would have voted for him because, uh, yes, there was a sign stealing scandal, and he was a big part of it, but he didn't do it as a player, so his numbers don't change.
Mhm. It's a great point. That's exactly what I was thinking as well of why I'd still vote him in that case too. But obviously he did get in. You had Andrew Jones get in too. And hopefully next year as well, like you said, there's going to be more guys that will probably get in. And there's some question marks. I already mentioned, as I said, Alex Rodriguez. I'm sure there'll be new guys next year. People are debating on whether or not they will get in. Obviously one guy, Pete Rose, who's now passed away, obviously, but he's a guy that was a popular topic of conversation about whether or not he was going to get into the Hall of Fame. And he was recently, if I'm correct, he was recently reinstated, right? Into being able to be voted in, was it? Is that correct?
Not voted. He's eligible because he's off the ballot now. You're only on a ballot for used to be 15 years, and they changed it to 10 years.
Hmm.
So he's not, the writers have no control over Pete Rose, even though the commissioner did something I don't even remember, to be honest with you, exactly what it was, where he could be eligible. Um, and again, I'm going to come right out and say it. I would never vote for Pete Rose if he was on the ballot because when you're betting on baseball, to me, you're taking the integrity of a sport, any sport, NBA, NHL, NFL. And if you're throwing money on your team, even if it was just on his own team, you can still affect the next game of the game before because you're using relievers differently. And, there's a big sign on that clubhouse door when you walk in. No guests, no agents, no betting on baseball. He knew it. He did to me, and I have friends that debate me to this day. How can you not have Pete Rose? He bet on baseball. It's that simple.
It's a great point. I never thought about what you just said, the how it affects the current game using certain relievers and pinch hitting guys, whatever it may be. Those situations are so much more different when you're thinking about, okay, I want to win this game right now because I'm betting on it. obviously it's going to affect the game before and the game after. That's a great point, Ken. Not many people would think of that. I never thought of that ever, and I'm a big baseball fan. I've never thought of it that way, but that's a great point, and I completely understand and hear you on that. And I feel like a lot of people would agree when you're betting on the game, when you're messing with the integrity of the game, it's a big reason you don't get in. Just like if Beltran was sign stealing as a player and he was a big part of it, that would maybe play a role in him not getting in. But obviously, him getting in is based on him as a player, not him as a coach, which obviously he was at the time in Houston. He was an assistant coach. So I get why he gets in, and obviously his numbers do match up with that. To transition now, talking about the
I,
Red
I
Sox.
just I just want to say
Yeah,
one thing really quick about that so I can clarify myself a little further.
yeah,
Pete Rose did bet as a manager. Now he
yeah.
wasn't a player. Now I know people might come back and say, "Well, Ken, that's Beltran didn't try to steal signs as a player either. He was a manager, a coach, like you said."
Mhm.
The difference is people always try to steal signs. The Astros just went too far. But when you're betting on the game, one other thing, you may know situations with other teams, and I equate it to insider trading. You might know that so and so's reliever is down, got a bad shoulder. That team is leaving Cincinnati and heading to San Diego, wherever. You might know things about the other team. That's why sports, the NFL, look at now, they have injury reports. They didn't have all that. Used to be writers used to get the insight, or NHL, they don't tell you anything. They say upper and lower body injury, and that's it. But the reason they're more open is because of gambling. They don't want that advantage to anyone. And Pete Rose could have had the advantage there too about other teams. So just want to clarify that. Sorry about that.
No, no, I'm happy you did clarify. Like, it's a really good point. I think a lot of people would definitely benefit from hearing that. It wasn't when he was playing, it was when he was as a manager. But there is some insider trading when you're even when you're working in the sports here, right? You're privy to a lot of information that a lot of people aren't. The common fan is not privy to when you're working in the sports field, whatever it may be. So I completely hear you on that, and that's why there's obviously a lot of restrictions and rules against gambling for a good reason. You got to keep the integrity of the game at its highest. That's got to be the main focus always, because once that gets messed with, the game is never the same. And we've obviously
So,
seen some players get in trouble now in recent years, right? Emmanuel Clase,
yep.
Ortiz as well, the reliever on Cleveland, both getting in trouble for gambling. Obviously, you can't have that. Same thing with Porter Jr. in the NBA. He got in trouble on gambling games. You can't be gambling on games. Obviously, it does take away from the integrity. So it makes sense why those people get lifetime bans from their respective sports. And obviously, we saw that happen now with baseball. Two guys in the past year, lose their ability to play the game. So they obviously have to come down hard on it. And I completely hear them and agree with them on that. To transition, talk about the Red Sox. Obviously, has not been the start we wanted. Currently sit at 23 and 32. Only 3.5 games back of the wild card. They made a big decision, though, over the last month, firing Alex Cora, obviously early in the season, a lot earlier than you'd ever expect them to make a managerial change. What were your thoughts on firing Cora?
Um, Alex was a very good manager. He knew how to, work a bullpen. He knew how to get to his players. But I have to say, I can't blame Craig Breslow for doing it. People in the know are talking about how Alex kind of might have behind the scenes got Heim Bloom pushed out. And if Alex is going to go up the back stairs like the old Red Sox days where players were rumored going up to the Yawkey ownership and complaining about managers, if Alex was going to do that, and if you heard Sam Kennedy in the press conference, they are a CBO down organization. So if your chief baseball officer doesn't have control and isn't putting things the way he wants it, it's awfully hard to A, kind of blame Breslow, even though I don't like the makeup of this team. B, it's going to be hard down the road to find somebody else to take the job because you have to give that CBO control of the organization. Now Breslow's got control. Now he's going to get his manager in there, most likely, if he's still there at the end of the year and the lockout and all that stuff coming up. But then he's on the hot seat. It's his call, then he becomes. So I didn't have a problem with it. I really didn't. I thought the team was underperforming. I thought they were basically similar roster to last year. Contreras replacing Bregman. Sure, Durbin was awful. I mean, he struggled a lot. But you look around the diamond, it's all the same players with upgraded pitching.
Mhm.
So something was missing. And it still is, unfortunately, to this day. But you got to make a move before the season's gone. You can't kiss a whole season goodbye.
hmm especially that early on, right? Where we came into the season with a lot of promise. This is a wild card team last year. They did lose some pieces, right? Bregman being one, but that's what added, a lot. If you look at Ranger
Yeah,
Suarez, Will Contreras,
yeah. Sonny
uh,
Gray.
Sonny Gray, like Contreras has been really good. Like we did add some guys, so to be in the position we're in, to be struggling, be 9 games out of 500 is really tough. Only 3.5 games back of the wild card. How much faith do you put in this Red Sox team being a playoff team, or at least in the playoff mix come September?
I don't see him becoming a playoff team. I just think there's too many teams and too many holes unless they make some drastic moves. Being in the mix, you ask them to win in September, mid September, early September. I mean, it's not hard with three wild card teams, and the whole AL is kind of limping along to have them stay in the mix. They might be four out, middle of September, five out. You're in the mix, but if you got six teams in front of you, you're really not. If you got three teams in front of you, you might have a shot. I don't see them doing it this year. They need a bat, they need some power. They just can't score enough. And now, unfortunately, it's become the opposite where they are scoring more, and now their pitching is letting them down a little bit. Sometimes teams go through those seasons like that, and it looks like they're going to.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been an up and down year for both offensively and obviously pitching wise as well. But overall, like the defense has improved this year compared to years past. The hitting obviously has still been an issue. The pitching's been, like you said, just not consistent. It's not been complementary baseball like we'd like, where the hitting and the pitching kind of coincided. They're both playing good ball at the same time. Where do you think the Red Sox go from here, players wise? There are some guys that are some trade candidates: Sonny Gray, Aroldis Chapman. Jaron Durant's playing a lot better baseball now the last 10 or 11 games. He might have at least some interest on the trade market now compared to a month ago. Where do you see the Red Sox at the trade deadline? Do you see them offloading some of those guys?
If they can make some moves mid June, still being 3, 2, 4 out of the wild card, I think the best kind of move they can make, and it seems like they don't want to add salary. So, you mentioned Durant. Maybe you find another guy that's in that $10 million range with another team that's struggling, and you do like an NBA dollar for dollar trade, and just bring in someone that's having a bad year somewhere else and see if you get lightning in a bottle. If that doesn't work, boy, I hate that they let Chapman not release, Chapman, but you might have to because he might bring the most. But again, here we go again. It'll probably be prospects or young players. And I think we've seen enough of that. Sonny Gray could go somewhere. Again, I don't want to touch early. Don't want to touch Tolley. Those kids, and they weren't there last year either. You add them to the mix. They've got much more pitching now. So can they get back in it? Yeah, if they can hit consistently. I think off the top of my head, they're 2-21 when they score 2 runs or less,
Hmm.
and that's just awful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
and
been it's
that's a
been tough.
lot of their games, by the way, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
It's a lot of games where they scored two or less, which is tough
Yeah,
because I saw a graphic, and this was earlier in the season, right? Probably about 2 weeks ago, where if we scored an league average 4 runs a game, we would have like I can't remember the exact number, but 32 and 18 record, for example, compared to whatever we were at the time. And it's like, you look at where we're at right now, it's like 23 and 32. The talent wise is better than 9 games out of 500 on this team.
I
Even with
agree.
struggles offensively, they are better than 23 and 32.
Because of the pitching, yes.
Exactly. But Bill Parcells did say, right, you are what your record is. And that's the
Yeah,
thing, just they're not playing good complementary baseball at the same time. So, like you said, the AL kind of limping along through about 1/3 of the season now has kind of helped us, right? Now you're still somewhat in the mix. In a normal year where the AL is playing really good ball, you might be 5, 6, 8 games out right now and be in a tough spot where you're thinking already ahead to, all right, the trade deadline, who can we offload? I think they're still in it just because it's 3.5 games. There are a lot of question marks, though. Roman Anthony, when's he going to be back, right?
yeah.
Caleb Durbin, can he turn things around? I'll start with the first guy that I mentioned, Roman Anthony. What's the situation on him, and when can we expect him to be back?
He hit off a tee today. He took dry swings 2 days ago. So he's getting close to either flips or live BP. And then he's probably going to need a couple of rehab starts down in Worcester. So I think at best you're looking about a week and a half to 2 weeks, at somewhere in that range. Um, and it's too bad because I think the kid's getting a little bit of pressure from the fans where they're thinking, he's got a sprained ring finger. Why can't he play? Apparently, he said to somebody today that there is a slight tendon tear. Now, if you can't squeeze the bat in that game, and I heard Lou Merlone say it best on the broadcast today, if you're an outfielder and you got a bum shoulder, you hit the cutoff. If you're a hitter and you got a bum hand, you can't play. You can't control the bat.
It's a great point, and that's obviously keeping him out of the game longer than we expected. A few weeks ago, it was he'll be back any other day, maybe, and then it obviously the last couple weeks has gotten worse, timing wise. But some of those tears, though, they linger, right? Some of those, even if it's a
Yeah,
minimal tear, anything in the finger, that can linger over time, even a
yeah,
sprain.
finger, hand, wrist, all that.
Mhm. That lingers over time. So hopefully he is back, like you said, in the next couple weeks. The Sox will probably be happy with that. Do you think we placed too much expectations on him as
Absolutely,
fans? We probably
absolutely.
placed too much, right?
Absolutely. He played, what, 60 games last year? And the team did too, the way they were talking about him during spring training, well, Roman. That's a lot to ask of a kid that played. And I know he had a good World Baseball Classic, and everybody's like, oh, he's going to be a great player. If your whole lineup's struggling, he's not going to see the same pitches, number one. Number two, that's putting a lot of pressure on a kid that, like I said, played about 60 games last year. Then he was hurt with the oblique, and he was done.
Mhm.
They were just asking way too much of him. And it just, will he be there one day? Maybe. I guess the expectations they're putting on him, we're talking, Mike Trout type talk. Well, I don't know. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
think too much expectation. Mike Trout, I saw Bryce Harper
Bryce
comparisons. It's like,
Harper, I mean, yeah, this kid's got to settle down and just play baseball. He can't worry about carrying a franchise. And that's a lot. That's a real lot.
especially when you look at the guys we lost over the last year, right? Bregman, Devers, like those are two big bats that somewhat protected him in the lineup. Bregman for more of last year than Devers because Devers they traded midway through, but those are guys that you had around you in your lineup where everybody was somewhat better off because pitchers would have to focus on them more than they'd focus on the guys that are hitting 7, 8, whatever it may be, right? Or if they could surround Roman with those guys, right? You have a much better time, much easier matchup than you might have before. And now he's the marquee guy in the lineup that teams had to worry about at times. Now
Well,
Contreras is
especially,
back,
yeah,
hurt, but
especially when he's batting leadoff, you had Contreras behind him if he'd get healthy. I thought Duran going back to leadoff would be a good move, and maybe have Anthony hitting third, or having hitting. You don't want to have two lefties, so maybe hit third, Contreras hit second. But that team just who hits cleanup? They've just got so many holes in that lineup, and then you get to the bottom until Connor Falefa started hitting, until Mickey Gasper came up. You weren't getting anything out of your catcher and your third baseman,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then Duran was hitting under 200, which he may still be. So
Mhm.
that's a lot of holes in the lineup.
100%. And the batting averages of those guys are really down. Some guys you just mentioned there, like Durbin,
Trevor
we already
Story, I
talked about.
forgot him. Yeah.
Dory. I mean, those guys are all under 220. You have Durant at 213 on the year, Meyer at 218. Story was at 206. Now he's obviously out. Durbin at 172. Of those guys, and those are four guys that are starting on opening day, right? Which one of those four guys, and Story's probably not going to be it because now he's out for some time. So of Durant, Meyer, and Durbin, which one of those guys do you have faith in bouncing back and maybe getting their batting average up to hopefully league average, 230, 240, 250, whatever it may be?
I'm going to say Duran. I still, because he's done it. And here we go again with the expectations. Marcelo Meyer, what is, I mean, again, what is he? He was hurt last year. He really didn't hit well. He's not hitting well again this year. It's just a lot of pressure on these young guys. Like you said, Story's out a while, so it'd be awfully hard for him to get his average up when he comes back.
Mhm.
Um, I'd say it's Duran, and I don't know if he can do it either.
Yeah, which is the tough thing because we're looking for guys to step up, right? They're going to be looking for
Yeah.
guys now with Anthony out another couple weeks. They're looking for guys to be that guy. Kind of Falefa has had a couple good moments. Sogard, honestly, I think is a really good contact hitter. I like Nick Sogard in the lineup. Masa Yoshida is a guy they don't really use much. He's only, I think, started in 30 or 40% of games this season. What are your thoughts on Masa? You think obviously he's not been an everyday player. Are they hoping someone would take him in a potential trade, like a salary dump at some point?
Well, and there's a good example of someone right there. If you could find a team that is that same dollar value swap or in that area, You don't have to bring on new salary. You take a flyer on somebody. People have talked about Tatis. He's having a really rough year with the Padres. Um, if you got to flip Massa or Duran, that'd be a good trade partner right there. I just feel bad for Massa a little bit. The guy can hit.
Yeah.
Now that he's healthy, he can hit, and he's not an awful outfielder. He's okay, but he's just not the guys that are out there, Abreu, Rafaela, and Duran. So it's kind of hard to play him out there.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I'm the biggest Massa fan. That's actually my favorite player in the Red Sox, but he's obviously not really gotten an opportunity, even with the injuries they've had, right? Roman's been out, still hasn't really gotten an opportunity, even with Duran's struggles, hasn't really got that opportunity to be an everyday player. And he hasn't the last couple of years with injuries and then just being on the bench in games, even when he's been healthy, hasn't really gotten that opportunity to shine completely. But I do agree, there is value to hitting. I know this team needs power. But they also need guys that can hit in certain situations. Runners in scoring position, you need someone that can put the ball in play and have a productive out. He's been able to do that for the most part the last few seasons, and that's why I feel like he could be a valuable piece of this lineup. Obviously, really hasn't gotten that chance, but it is what it is at the end of the day. I think, like you said, someone's going to take a flyer on him potentially in a trade. I think there's a value of him going to a team that needs somebody that can just put the ball in play, that puts guys in scoring position already. One team I'm thinking of off the top of my head right now that could potentially use Massa, a team like St. Louis, and that's Chaim Bloom's team, a team that obviously doesn't really try to spend much money, so he'd obviously raise their payroll a little. But they have a lot of guys in that lineup that get on base, that are in scoring position. If you have a guy like Massa that hits fifth or sixth in that lineup that can get those guys in, there's value to that. And they've played really good ball this year, St. Louis. I don't expect them to really shake things up much, but that's a team I feel like could have interest, especially with Bloom's background and signing him. What are your thoughts on Chaim Bloom and what he's done in St. Louis? Obviously, he's been a great year this year for them.
Yeah, he seems like he's getting to do everything that he wanted to do here. He's bringing in the young people. He's shed some salary, and the division might be a little easier. I don't know how much, but when you don't have the Yankees and the Rays playing the way they are in front of you. But he's done a nice job. I mean, Heim, he had a mandate here to not spend so much, and he did what he had to do. And, Heim will always be remembered for trading Mookie Betts. Unfortunately, it wasn't only his call. That was probably one of the first orders of business when he took the job. So
Yeah, that's music to my ears because that's what I always say. I've said on this podcast now for 4 years now. This is now my fourth year having the podcast. This past Sunday was my four-year anniversary, and I've always
congratulations.
said I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ken. But I've always said I don't think that was Chaim Bloom's main decision. I think that was ownership saying, "Hey, we don't want to pay him over 300 million. He's not going to take anything less than that. Trade him. This is your first order of business, like you said. Go get a great offer." Obviously, the return wasn't what we wanted, but at the end of the day, I do think though that was an ownership decision. And Chaim's first job was, "Hey, get rid of this guy, and you're going to take obviously the brunt of trading him, right? All the fans are going to be upset. You're going to be the one kind of responding to that, and it's tough. You agree though that was probably more of an ownership thing, or at least ownership was involved. You don't trade Mookie Betts without approval from up top.
I think, okay, two things. Yes, I think ownership was against long-term deals. And can I say this? I'm not a big fan of them either, because you sign guys to these 10 years, 300 million, you're eating the back 3, 4 years. Just look in history. A-Rod, Mark Teixeira, Xander Bogaerts now with the Padres. When you have those long-term deals, it's the cost of doing business. I understand, but you're eating a lot of years where they're not as productive. And I'm not a big fan of them either because of that. So I think it wasn't that they were specifically saying, you're not signing Mookie Betts. It was, we're going to stay away from the long-term deals that take guys to their mid to late 30s. And I think that was the organization's philosophy, and Heim had to live with it. And maybe it was Heim's. I don't know. I mean, it could have been. Maybe his philosophy was, these don't work. Why do we want to do this?
Mhm.
So
I'm completely with you there. I think it was probably that philosophy. We don't want to spend, years 7 through 10 just chewing money when guys aren't even either on their roster, and if they are, they're not the player they once were. We saw
right.
that a lot in baseball, especially the last 5 to 10 years. Chris Davis, for example, in
Yeah.
Baltimore,
Oh, yes. I
like he
forgot
was
him.
really good for 3 years of that 10-year deal or 8-year deal, whatever he got. And in the last 4 years was, one of the worst hitters in baseball,
Oh,
unfortunately.
it was
That's just where
awful.
things
Yeah,
go.
I forgot that one. There've been, if you look back, there's been even, let's be honest, Mookie has tailed off. Was it last year? I believe it was. They had to sit him for a while because he was struggling so badly.
Mhm.
He went from those, I don't know how many years he's been there, four very good years to now he's tailing off. So it's
Mhm.
just asking a lot for a guy to have a long-term deal like that. Even pitchers, I don't disagree with the Red Sox not wanting to sign pitchers to 7, 8 year deals. You can
Mhm.
almost guarantee one of them would be spent with Tommy John. It seems like it. So if it's a 5 year deal, now you're down to four right away. So, it's just that's the economics of the game. And unfortunately, that's what's going to lead to a lockout, most likely.
You make a great point though about Mookie, obviously his decline over time now. And it's early in the season, right? He's only played 22 games because he's battled injuries this year, but his OPS the last 4 years from 2023 to today, so through 2026, 987, 863, 732, 649. And that's concerning for a guy that's obviously only played 22 games this year, but now Mookie Betts is 33 years old, turning 34. That's heavy concern. It is. I think it's a valuable concern, for that Dodgers team to worry about, can Mookie Betts be the player he once was? And like you said, that's why the Red Sox probably didn't want to pay him because they saw years 35, his age-wise, age
Sure.
35 season and on was going to be an issue. And the Dodgers are going to be chewing some money. They did get some World Series rings out of it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
at the
They
end of the
sure
day,
did.
they're fine with chewing that money probably. And we've seen them obviously chew contracts already the last few years. Like they signed Trevor Bauer to a big contract. Obviously, he had his issues off the field. They can just chew that money and say, whatever, go on to the next guy. Not every team can have that luxury. The Dodgers obviously can. They can give 4 year, $240 million deals to Kyle Tucker because they have the ability to do so, but not every team can do that. You had one point though about the lockout, and I completely hear you on that. What do you think the future of baseball holds after this season? Will there be a salary cap in the future, a salary floor in the future? What do you think could happen in that next lockout? Which I say next lockout because it's honestly assumed we're going to have it. I think everybody, is expecting it.
Well, the owners came back and they wanted a salary cap. The players' proposal yesterday had no salary cap whatsoever. The players had a high ceiling. The owners had a lower ceiling. The players had a high floor. The owners had a much lower floor. I mean, the only logical way this can happen is if the floor comes up enough to make the players happy to where, okay, we'll give you a cap at 300 million, whatever. I'm throwing a number out there. But players have never wanted a salary cap ever. And ownership has never had one. They've had a soft cap, which has a luxury tax involved. And players can now point at, well, the Rays are doing fine. And they can point at these lower market teams saying, well, it doesn't mean that just because we're throwing all this money at big market teams, the Red Sox, the Phillies, the Mets, the Mets are struggling. You know, the problem we have now is you have lower market teams doing well, which helps ownership prove their point, but actually helps players prove their point too. So where does it go? I mean, I don't, the problem I always have in baseball is the owners seem like they want to screw it up, not intentionally. It only upsets the fans. Nobody's, putting a ransom note to an owner or putting a gun to their head. I hate using that phrase. It's just a phrase saying you've got to give Mookie Betts $350 million. They choose to. If they didn't have it, if they didn't make money, they wouldn't do it. It's a business economics thing.
Mhm.
So in most cases, I always side with the player. Nobody's forcing ownership to give 20 million, 30 million, 40 million. It's their choice.
Mhm.
So now they want to change all the rules. And I could side with the players slightly. But if the owners are smart and they lift up that bottom floor, then it's going to make the players look bad. Well, listen, you've got 200 or 170 now for all those teams below, and you won't take 300 on the top, or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
So it's going to be an ugly situation. And I dislike, I go down to spring training each year, Joey, and I dislike it. I mean, I just don't want to see baseball locked out, but everybody's saying it's heading that way. So I
Mhm.
think we can be guaranteed. I know it's a long answer. I think we'd be guaranteed December 1st they'll have a lockout. When will they come back? Could it be February, March, April, July? You know, if they ever kiss away a whole season, they're going to lose fans. People are
Mhm.
going to find other things to do,
Mhm.
and they're going to not go back as quickly. They think they will, but you know, you start doing something else, you get into another hobby, and then you don't have time for the other thing. So
You're right.
sorry about the long answer.
No, no, I thought it was great. No, always feel free to give an in-depth answer. That's excellent insight into what the future of the MLB holds. I think I completely agree with you on that. There's going to be a lockout. It probably will be ugly. I'm hoping it doesn't really take too much of the season away because I feel like the game of baseball really has grown. The last 5 years, you have a lot more international buzz around certain players. Shohei Ohtani, Ronald Acuna Jr., Juan Soto even, right? Like there are a lot of guys that have a lot of buzz around them that have international appeal. The game has grown. I feel like a lockout does kind of hinder that progress, but it's just presumed it's going to happen, unfortunately. I think everybody just kind of expects it at this point. You made a great point, though, too. It's the owners. The owners had no one's really forcing them to give a 12-year, $365 million deal to Mookie Betts. The Red Sox can say, hey, I don't want to give him that. The Dodgers want to do it. There are owners that have the ability to do that that will do so. And that's a market for a lot of these players. Guys aren't going to be getting no one's going to be taking hometown discounts necessarily anymore. We saw Jose Ramirez. He's taken, I think, a few extensions and kind of new deals in Cleveland, and they've all been discounts. Not many players do that, right? And that's Jose's decision, and I respect him for that, not going for the top dollar value of what he'd get from a team like the Mets or the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Phillies. But not every player is doing that. They're all going for top money, and I understand why they do that. You know what I mean? They're going to go for
Well,
those big
there's a
money.
new trend. Yeah, there's a new trend now. You long-term deals for young players. Roman Anthony,
Mhm,
Cedar Rafaela, Brian Bayo,
mhm,
Kristen Campbell.
mhm.
It's very interesting. They're trying to lock up their young players to a more friendly deal. And that's a good way of doing business. But you're also taking a real gamble on guys. Kristen Campbell went down after his first 2 months and he's never been back. And
Mhm.
he's down there making 85 million over 7 years. Um, you know, so you're locking up your talent, but is that the best route too? Do they keep them hungry? Does it have these kids striving to be great players? And I'm not questioning Roman Anthony, but he's got a long-term deal. He's set, and he wants to get out there. Athletes want to play. I don't want that to be taken the wrong way. But again, you know, the game, like you said, owners don't want to put these long-term deals out. Nobody's making them. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that baseball has to decide. And baseball, you said there's more buzz. The pitch clock, I didn't want it. I like it. The ABS, I definitely didn't want it. I'm used to it. It's fine. It's quick. I never thought it'd be this quick.
Mhm.
There's debate on where the line is, the middle of the plate, the front of the plate. We could debate that. The shift, it's gone. Even though they still have kind of a shift, because the shortstop's always playing just behind the bag on the other side. You don't get those hits up the middle anymore. But they've got to find ways, the bigger bag, stealing. But baseball average batting average is like 241. They got to get
Mhm.
more juice in the game. And pitchers throw so hard, 90 plus, over 100. I think they might have to look at lowering the mound again. I mean, but the poor pitchers, it's always against the pitchers, the pitchers, the pitchers. But there is a lot of, there's some boring baseball games, let's be honest. A lot of walks, a lot of strikeouts. And I love the game. So
Mhm.
they've got to be more creative.
Mhm. Mhm. I
So,
think I think like you just said too, offense kind of creates that buzz. You want a league average is 241. You make that league average 250, 255. You see more guys on base, more runs scored, probably more home runs as well. The NFL, a lot of the rules they've had in recent years has been to help the offense,
oh,
hurting the
yes.
defense, obviously, but help the offense because that's what creates buzz, right? People want to see high scoring games more than like to see a low scoring game, right? Like, and I think that's a cool point about lowering the mound. I'm not sure if they'd ever do that because I feel like pitchers would have a real problem with that. Like obviously the sticky stuff, getting rid of that, that was a real point of contention between pitchers in the league. That was something that obviously had to be done. Maybe they shouldn't have done it mid-season, but that was something that probably should have happened, in years prior, especially if the league knew about it. But what do you think the future holds there of lowering the mound? Do you think that's a legitimate possibility?
No, I don't think it's on the radar yet. I don't. I think they're going to just hope that the athletes take over, more speed, more running, more hits, no shift. A little dramatic, but they could have some sort of a trapezoid where the shortstop and second baseman, like the goaltender in hockey, can't be behind the bags so far over that. I don't know if I'd want that to have these chalk lines on the field, but the game will fix itself, and it always does. You'll have those stars like the Otanis of the world that can they can hit no matter what.
Mhm.
But I don't think they'll get drastic. I don't think there'll be anything with the mound just yet.
Mhm. I'm with you on that. And like you said, these players figure it out over time. It's a long season, 162 games. There are guys we talked about already in this episode. Jaron Duran, for example, like he could get really hot. We've seen him get really hot in years past where his average can jump from 220 up to 270. Like it's possible. I think that obviously can happen over the course of the year. The league average could get better, but there are so many guys that are throwing faster today. Like you look at Jacob Mizorowski in
Oh,
Milwaukee throwing
yeah.
100 miles an hour for 50 plus pitches in a game. Like
Yeah, I saw
that's
that.
crazy. That's crazy. And my dad said he always says it every time we're watching a game and there's somebody throwing 100. Back in my day, 97 was really fast. He'd say when he was a
Oh, yeah.
kid. And now
Yeah, I
guys throwing
mean,
100 consistently.
it seems like all bullpens have guys 97 plus. It used to be if you had that one guy that came out, you said, "Oh, this guy's going to be hard to hit." I mean, you had Nolan Ryan, what, 7 no hitters. He was the fireballer. But, there weren't each staff didn't have 4 guys in the bullpen coming out throwing that speed. You'd see this guy throwing 97, the next guy's 98, the next guy's 99. Like, oh, it doesn't get any easier for hitters.
Mhm, mhm. That's how the game's evolved. These athletes are stronger, quicker, faster, right? Even
Training,
these
better
guys too.
training.
Exactly. The training's better. Now they have analytics that'll teach them, oh, you're not, stepping off your back foot enough. Maybe in years past they didn't have that same technology, and that's probably why the game has gotten better with better pitching. But it's obviously taken away from the offensive side of the game. And I know they've had juice balls in years past, right? Where we had
Yeah.
years where guys are hitting that are typically hitting 15 home runs, hitting 35 home runs. I'm not sure if the league wants to go back to that because that created a lot of buzz about whether or not the league was juicing balls. I'd imagine they were back in 2017. There was some uptick in home runs, and then even 3 or 4 years ago, we had a lot of guys hitting more home runs than they ever have. Did you buy into that rumor that they were juicing balls?
Well, the pitchers are always the ones to ask, and I can remember being in clubhouses or Fenway, home and away at Fenway, and the pitchers would say something's funny about the baseball. They'd bring it up right away. So yeah, I believe it. If the pitchers are saying it, I don't think they're making up for their numbers that they say, well, I've given up 22 home runs. Maybe I'm not pitching well. I think it was part of it. Absolutely.
Because we've seen guys have career years home runs wise. Like, for example, like Jackie Bradley Jr. had it was about 30 home runs one year, and then his career high besides that might have been 18 or 20, right? And even Jacoby Ellsbury had a big time year with I think it was like 27 home runs, and that's years ago. But there are a lot of guys that have had some years that were kind of really, points of data that are way out, right? Like,
Well, now you're getting back to the steroid era, Joey. You got Brady Anderson,
yeah.
Sosa, McGuire, Bonds, you got a lot of guys in that area there that all of a sudden, you can look at guys on the Red Sox. I'm not accusing them of steroids, but their numbers just shot up on home runs. You look at some guys on the 04, 05 team. It just happened, or 03 or whenever before they started testing in 04.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it just, you had that, and way back in the 70s and 80s, you had greenies in the game, uppers. They talk about to keep guys, fresh and going. There's always been something. So
Mhm.
it's just the way it is
Mhm.
now. Now it's analytics.
Yeah, that's the new thing in the game, obviously, and a lot of people are against analytics. And I have one question I want to ask you about the NBA, but I'd love to get your thoughts on analytics, not just in baseball, but sports in general. Do you think it's something that is a good thing, bad thing, something in the middle?
Wow, you touched a nerve. Now you ready for this? Did you see what Kenny Atkinson said a couple of days ago? Oh
I
my
did.
God. I, if I'm the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I might have thought of firing him on the spot. I mean, when he says our analytics people have said our expected shot rate, we've won 2 out of the 3 games. What are we doing? And then, you see the NFL, they look at numbers and they say, well, 4th and 1 at your 35 is the same as 4th and 1 at their. No, there's ramifications. If you get stopped on your own 35, the other team's in scoring position. But the biggest one to me, besides the Kenny Atkinson, that was, oh my God. Um, Baseball, they don't have clutch and late. They don't believe in it. To them, statistically, analytically, it doesn't factor in. So you're telling me that second and third, 2 outs in the first inning is same as second and third and 2 outs in the 8th inning? No, I'm sorry. The game is different. I'm not going to pick on these kids, but the NBA, you watched game 7 of Celtics Philly, I'm sure. Bailey Sharman had 3 wide open threes, missed them all. Hugo Gonzalez had 2 wide open threes from the midpoint of the third quarter to the midpoint of the fourth quarter, missed them both. Taking that 3 analytically, because it says their shot make percentage, it's not the same as game 22 of the regular season. I'm sorry. Game 7, game 21, game 47, game 7 of the playoffs. But for Kenny Atkinson, boy, did you touch a nerve. That was embarrassing to analytics for him to say. And don't forget, they blew a big lead in game 1 and still lost by 11 in overtime. And I believe game 2, the other one he's referring to, they lost by 9. So
Yeah.
where is the make shot percentage telling me that it was close enough they should have won? I'm sorry. Too much.
I'm with you though. That was a tough line for Kenny. And I think Kenny's a great coach, but that was a tough line. The expected points he said to reporters right away. I know you guys probably aren't going to like this answer, but it is what it is. Like expected points tell us that we should be up 2-1. But the crazy thing is too, like you said, they blew game 1. It should have been 2-1 at that point. Like legitimately with the Knicks up 2-1 though in the series. They should have
Right.
won game 1, not lost that. That's a completely different series. They won
Absolutely.
game 1. It would have been maybe 2-2, I think, after 4 games. And then you don't know what happens in those last 3. But obviously, they blew that lead and didn't help themselves. And you made an excellent point, and a lot of people don't talk about it. Analytics, I think, it helped the game in some ways. But
Sure.
there's also a feel for the game, though. Like you said, eighth
Yes.
inning, clutch, somebody that you know that could step up in that moment. There's a feel for the game, a feel for a player where you're like, okay, this guy might have been struggling, but you know what? I feel like he can come up big in this situation. Analytics might tell you not to do that, but you've seen this guy do it in the past. I'm going to have my trust in him and let him step up to the plate. They don't really do that, though. Like you said, it's all analytics based, where a basic computer and all these numbers are kind of deciding lineups and who to put in at what time. But there should be still a feel for the game factor of this is my gut feeling. I feel like we should go with this rather than, like you said, the
Well,
Celtics. This shit with the
yeah.
lead.
Oh, yeah. And statistically, you can use statistics to a point, but you got to know who your guys are. You got to know who in that moment. I don't want Bailey Shireman taking a 3 late in the third, early fourth when you're trying to make a comeback.
Yeah.
Just like, the Celtics were down 1 in game 7, 3 straight possessions. Missed 3 by Brown, kind of forced.
Mhm.
Peyton Pritchard, that's the one that they'll always regret. Wide open left corner. It's almost like he was setting up for a free throw. Set his feet, went up, front rimmed it, and then Brown in the lane. 3 straight possessions. You're down 1. If you get the lead, the roof is coming off that building, and who knows what happens. But they're taking that first shot and even Brad Stevens was asked, does he like the 3? He says, well, when they're good 3s. Sometimes you're rushing them just because it's telling you to shoot more 3s, shoot more 3s, shoot quicker. We got to get more shots than they get off. We take 92, they take 81. We got a better shot of winning. It's just, and I know I've had this debate with my son's friend who he actually works for the Cardinals now, but we've debated this analytic thing over and over, and he's big into statistical and math and how it can help, and I believe it can, but I guess I'm going to sum it up here because I can go on and on. All the fourth downs these teams are trying in the NFL now, their own 40. You got to understand the game. Do we need to do this right here? Or as Mike Vrabel did in Denver, just popped in my head, punt, punt, punt. Make them come down. Weather's getting bad. We don't need to go on our 45, punt it. We don't need to go on their 47, punt it. Make it harder on the other team sometimes. Know the game, understand the game. Like you said, have the right guy up in the right situation. So I used to love a manager like Joe Morgan of the Red Sox, Walpole Joel, former BC guy, by the way.
Mhm.
Loved it. 6-2 and even. There you go. Go Eagles. 6-2 and even. I loved him. He went on a hunch. And that's how Joe was. 20 in a row at Fenway Park. Hasn't been done since. So
And we might not get 20 games, won at Fenway this year with the way we've been
the way
playing.
it's going, I know. You're right. Good point.
You might not, but you're right though. There's still a feel for the game, and you make a great point about Vrabel punting the ball away. You don't want to give that team the advantage of having the ball at your own 35-yard line. You don't. And even if analytics say, oh, it's fourth and inches,
Midfield,
but it's probably going to
even
win.
midfield, yeah, in that kind of weather, you play all that in. Everything is not the same. Analytics cannot put in weather, wind,
Hmm.
how your defense is playing, all that. It's statistical. It's numbers.
Hmm.
Now, they do have percentages that were successful at this point, this many percentage, but then it changes. There's different variables they cannot account for. You know, my offensive line's a little beat up now. Okay, I can't get a yard right now. I got two backup guards in or whatever.
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
can't account for that. So
Hmm.
that's all.
A great point.
It's a
With
nice tool, but it's not the only tool.
hmm I'm with you. I think it should be used, and I think it can help you, but I don't think it should be everything at the end of the day. You still have to have that feel for the game, and I think honestly, the game's gone away from it though, gone away from that old school feel for the game, and it's all about just the math and the data, which I think that's just because everybody wants a competitive advantage and they think that's their only way of getting an advantage. But at the same time, you can't shy away from what's worked in the past where some people have had success. Terry Francona is an old school ball coach, right? And
Yeah,
he's had a lot of, good seasons going based on gut feel, who to put in, when to put them in. Does it always work? No. I mean, sometimes you're going to be wrong, but the analytics are wrong sometimes too. And I feel like
sure,
people think the analytics are always right, but that's not always the case. And you made a point about the Celtics, and I want to ask you a question about them.
sure.
Obviously, they forced a lot of threes in that game seven, didn't work out. Didn't have Tatum, unfortunately. What do you think the future holds for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in Boston? Because there are obviously question marks about whether or not Brown is a trade piece this offseason.
I personally would like to see both of them back because would you look at what they've accomplished in their time together? It's pretty nice run. Granted only one title, but all those Eastern Conference championships they've been in. I don't want to see them flip Brown in a package for Giannis. Giannis is a very, very good player. Breaking down a little bit now. And if you want to see someone command the ball, it's going to be Giannis. You won't see that fluidity in the offense. And I want to be clear. I mean, the Celtics taking all those threes. Joe has. I remember many post game press conferences. He'd look at the stat sheet and say, "Well, we took 92 shots. They took 81. We hit 17 threes. They hit 12." It made me realize during that NBA run for the title that I understand his numbers. They're right. If we take 11 more shots, we probably should win. If we hit five more threes, we probably should win. It's just teaching your guys the right moment. If they're wide open, take them. I understand, but there's certain guys, I'll say it again. I don't want Bailey Sharman taking it in a big moment. Not yet. Maybe next year. I don't want Hugo Gonzalez taking it in a big moment. Maybe next year. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a great point, and I'm with you on that of keeping Tatum and Brown together because I think Giannis still a top three player in the game. Honestly, if I'm trying to win right now, if he's fully healthy, he might be the best player in the game, the most dominant at least. He's really tough to stop. With that being said, I don't think he fits in this Celtics offense. If you want guys that can shoot threes, all five guys on the floor can space. Giannis is not that player. He's not shooting
no.
threes for you, and he's not going to learn that shot. He's not going to learn the 3-point shot at this point in his career, probably. We've seen some guys do it, like Andre Drummond. Drummond had to do it to stay in the league as long as he has. Giannis
Right.
doesn't have to shoot threes to stay in the league. He can just drive and get to the bucket and slash. But that's the thing. I don't think he fits in this Celtics offense. Do I think Giannis is a terrific player, though? Yes. So would I listen to trade offers? Sure, but I don't think I would make that move. I think there are other guys the Celtics could go get. But if it's your decision, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum stay together, correct?
Correct. And I'm just going to ask you one question for you now. It sounds like you're a big Celtics fan. When you were watching the Celtics play the Bucks, aren't you watching saying, give him that shot when he takes the three? Let him take that jump because you didn't want him driving down the lane. You didn't want that big bull coming in at that strength. So weren't you, same thing when they played Philly, weren't you watching Embiid saying, give him that shot, give him that shot? When they're
Mhm.
taking the long three or the long two.
Mhm.
So I'll ask you, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You'd prefer that because you'd give them that shot. It's probably a lower percentage shot than driving down the lane. It's either going to make it or they're probably going to get fouled, especially if it's
Yep.
a situation late in a game where you're not going to want them to score a bucket. You want them to earn it at the free throw line. They're going to have to probably foul in that case. You don't want to just give up a layup. So I'm with you on that. Letting them shoot that long shot. And Embiid, it worked for at times, especially in some of those later games in game 6 and game 7. He was hitting some of those. And sometimes you just live by that, just like they live by the three and they die by the three at times. Sometimes that's the Celtics kind of, motive and what their game plan is. But what are your thoughts on that? Give them the longest shot rather than them getting to the bucket and getting to the free throw line?
Well, with those players, yes, those dominant inside players. I think what the Celtics need to do is they need to bring in, when you think about when they won the title, they had Holiday, they had Porzingis. Even though Porzingis was hurt for a lot of that run, I think they need to find that. And again, this is where Brad Stevens is going to make his money. You got to find that another Derek White type, another guy that fits as a tool to make them a little more dangerous, not just Brown and White and Pritchard, or not just Tatum and Brown and White and Pritchard, but you got to bring that one more guy. They were hoping that Vucevic would be that guy. Didn't help them at all. Cade is a nice player, but he's not going to be that guy. He's going to be a nice role player. So if they could find that one more, you look at the Knicks right now. They got Hart, they got Bridges, they've got a lot of pieces. So that one more guy to fit that role, maybe play defensively and be a scorer, and they'll find one. I think Brad Stevens will. And then you make them stronger that way, and then you bring a veteran big man, somebody that's, I believe Hartenstein's a free agent too at the end of the year, the Knicks.
Mhm.
So somebody like that, you just upgraded your team instantly. So I
Mhm.
think that's what they've got to do.
Mhm. It's a great
So
point. They need that Drew Holiday guy. God, it's a glue guy that's been there. And now
yep,
they're Celtics have already had their ring. Obviously, so Tatum and Brown have the experience, Derek White even. But when they got Drew Holiday, they needed a guy that at least has been in the NBA a long time, been in a lot of big moments. Drew didn't necessarily, which he had one ring before that, but he didn't necessarily have a Hall of Fame career necessarily. It's not like you're adding, like if you add Giannis to the team, he's a Hall of Famer right now for sure.
right.
So maybe, yeah, maybe the Celtics do go that road and they try to go get that guy. But I think getting a guy like Drew Holiday, a guy that's a journeyman veteran who's been there in a lot of big moments, all-star caliber player who can really just gel with Tatum and Brown. That's what you want. Guys that can gel with your two superstars. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
And to do
Um,
the dirty work too, that guy that gets you that big rebound, that guy that defends, might defend Brunson or defend somebody like that. Yeah, it's
mhm,
the kind of guy you need. You need it because Brunson's nobody could stop him right now. It seems like so. That's the route Brad Stevens has got to go. Just add to your pieces that way. If
mhm,
you're going to start breaking it up, you're getting really desperate. If you're breaking up Tatum and Brown, then you got to go find two pieces.
mhm,
Giannis, is that enough? You got to bring another one. So
mhm.
that's just me.
I'm with you on that. And a lot of the time you trade a superstar, and even if it's for another superstar, Giannis for Jaylen Brown, two top players. Those are always somehow, some way, 3, 5 years later down the line, a lopsided trade. Oh, that's kind of always how it goes, where one guy gets hurt. We've seen it in the past. I'll bring up, which I'm a Celtics fan. I was a Celtics fan growing up, still like the Celtics. The LA Clippers are my team because Paul George went there, and Paul George was my favorite player. He still is one of my favorite, but at the time was my favorite player. So I became a Clips fan. But you look at that trade at the time, you're trading for a superstar at the time in Paul George, trading a young piece in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and you just handed the Thunder basically
Yep.
a dynasty, right? So like those trades don't always work. You know what I mean? Does it sometimes? Yes, you can win a ring from it, but they don't always work. Trading a big player for whatever it is, picks a young player or a star for a star, they don't always work. We've seen it in years past, and we'll see what the Celtics choose to do. I do want to ask you about the Knicks though, and the Spurs in the Thunder series. This will be my final question. What are your
Sure.
thoughts on the NBA Finals? How do you think things will end up? Obviously now tonight with being Game 6 between the Spurs and the Thunder, we'll see what happens in the West. But how do you think things stand right now for the NBA Finals?
I had this conversation with somebody the other day. They said, well, it doesn't matter who the Knicks play, they're going to get killed. I don't think so. I think it's a 6 game series minimum. If it's OKC, I will take OKC. Um, if they were playing San Antonio, I think the Knicks could give them more trouble because they have two big men. They have Anthony and they have the other gentleman there. I forget his name. They were talking about on the broadcast the other day. So I think the Knicks can. Who stops Brunson right now? And their role players are playing extremely well. You think about what Hart's done and Bridges and the kid that was in Toronto. I can't even remember.
Ananobi.
Ananobi, thank you.
Mhm.
They're all playing extremely well right now. And I, you know, let's face it, we're Bostonians. People around here don't want to see the Knicks win a title. I think they can take it six. I think they could take it six. And would it shock me if they took it seven? No, it wouldn't. But I'll still pick the West. I'll pick OKC if they
Mhm.
win tonight, or I'll
I'd
pick
agree
San
with you.
Antonio in seven.
Mhm.
So
I'd agree with you on that, though. I think the Knicks. I think it was maybe Skip Bayless. Someone said like, "Oh, the Knicks, they made it to the finals just to get swept in 4 games." It's like the way they're playing right now, they're probably
yeah.
playing the best basketball in the NBA.
Oh, they're smooth right now. They're like when the Celtics were on those runs when you're hitting threes and you're popping them, they're hitting 22, 25. That's what the Knicks are doing right now. Brunson is just dominating the game. When he needs to get a bucket late in the game, he does. When he needs to find an open man, he does. They're playing extremely fluid. Now, will the layoff hurt them? Maybe. Maybe they won't be as fluid starting next Wednesday. But I'm going to say OKC in six, San Antonio in seven if they play the Knicks. So,
Okay. All right. I would agree with probably both of those, honestly. I'm gonna stay with probably the same two, honestly. I'd say Oklahoma City wins in the West. That would be my guess as of now. And I think, like you said, they've been really good, Oklahoma City, even with Jalen Williams being out, which he's supposed to be back tonight. I read that right before we jumped on the podcast here, that he's supposed to return for tonight, or he was at least probable to play. They've been winning games without him. And even
yep.
with SGA not having the best playoffs, he's had some struggles over the course of the playoffs, and they're still winning games because how deep of a roster they are. I think the Spurs, though, I think the Spurs would give the Knicks trouble just like the Thunder would. That's why I think either team would win. But I wouldn't count the Knicks out against either team, honestly. I
No,
wouldn't
I
be
agree.
surprised. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. I think people are overlooking them. And trust me, I actually had the Hawks winning first round against the Knicks. So I've been doubting the Knicks probably most series. I thought they were going to win against the Sixers, but for the most part in the playoffs, I have doubted them. Against the Cavs even, I thought the Cavs were going to win that series. I look at it now and I'm like, you know what? I can't doubt them anymore. This team's good. Like
Yeah.
they found ways to win. And like you said, like when the Celtics were dominant, even back in 2024, they found ways to win. And in close games, when they found themselves in close games, they found ways to get big buckets, and that's what the Knicks have done. They've found ways to win those close games, and they've also won in blowouts, and they haven't lost a game in a month now, over a month. So I'm with you. I think they'll stay hot. I think it'll be a tough series for them, no matter who they play. But I would say Thunder in six, Spurs in seven. Should they, make the playoffs? Should they make the finals against either one of those two teams? But Ken, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It was an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a very busy schedule, obviously, with everything you got going on in the sports world and then everything you're doing outside of it. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated, my friend. Always a great time talking with you.
Joey had a great time. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. You have a great rest of your night. Thank you.
You too, Joey. Take care.